So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are honored to have guests from South Atlantic Bank here with us, and they're sharing on the topic of money management and how you can take command of your financial future. I'm Lizanne Lightfoot. I'm a military spouse, Marine Corps veterans spouse specifically, and I'm the VP of Marketing at GoVA Foundation. That is a nonprofit that's focused on providing financial literacy to our military community nationwide. And we do that by partnering with local banks like South Atlantic, who sponsor members in their local region. So today we have 3 South Atlantic members with us. Michelle, Gail, and Dan are all going to be sharing some of their expertise. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. Michelle, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about your area of expertise at the bank and the topics that you will be addressing today?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having us. I'm Michelle Coletta. I am the Director of Retail Banking. I have been with South Atlantic almost 18 years. My experience is primarily on the retail side of the bank. I have experience as a branch manager, as a consumer lender. My current role, I lead our branch teams, and that's on the sales and the customer experience. And the main goal is to help, grow loans and deposits. My experience, or kind of how I have a VA relation here, is my husband is an Army veteran. He did serve as an Army medic from 1989 to 1997. He did a couple of, he was deployed to the Middle East between 1990, 1991, and he was also in Somalia between 1992 and 1993. So he and we've had a few VA loans, and we are, big fans and support each veteran taking advantage of the benefits that are available to them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all of the many sacrifices that your family has made, and of course for sharing that knowledge with us today. So I look forward to your perspective. Dan, can you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Dan Sordi. I'm the mortgage lender for one of the mortgage lenders for Beaufort County. I've been with the bank for a little bit over 5 years now as a mortgage lender the whole time. My focus is really on doing mortgages of all sorts. So VA loans, FHA loans. I mean, we're a one-stop shop when it comes to mortgages. So I'm going to be kind of talking about, credit and ways to help with our military, and so that's what I'm going to be focused on.
Perfect. Well, thank you as well. And Gail, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
I am Gail Mullen, and I am also a Marine Corps spouse of a veteran. My husband also served civil service with MCCS as the Marine Life and Family Services Director. So I've had a lot of experience with overseas. We spent the last 7 of our 10 years overseas in Japan and Hawaii. So I know what it's like to have those large overseas deployments, and empathize with the women and the families who are growing along with their spouse that's in the military. So I'm here on the retail side to help share some of my expertise. I spent many years as a mortgage lender as well. I'm now in my retirement years, hoping to grow as an individual and to help in any way I can. So I'm here to help in any way. Just let me know what I can do for you.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Gail. I'm so looking forward to your perspective, and obviously feel a strong connection. I'm sure we have some shared experiences, but really grateful for this team that South Atlantic has put together today and this depth of knowledge and military perspective. So I want to dive into it. Those who are listening live, remember you can join us in the chat at any time. We will be sharing your questions with our speakers, but today they do have several different topics that we're going to cover, all on different financial future planning, getting out of debt, understanding credit scores and things like that. So want to get right into it. So let's talk first about just looking at the basics of your financial situation. Obviously, there's so many changes in military life every time we move, every time we go through deployments, the household budget just changes dramatically, and that can be really tough. But one of those biggest transitions is going out of the military into civilian life. My family went through that a few years ago, quite a roller coaster ride. And so I wanted to hear from Michelle and Gail specifically about what are some of those financial friction points that either you've experienced or that you've seen military families in the community going through as they're transitioning out of the military. And what would you recommend for tools or services to help through that process, to deciding when a family needs like a financial health checkup?
I'm happy to start out. I would think that someone, going from military to civilian, it's going to be a big adjustment to go from the, maybe the income that you previously had. Maybe there would be some inconsistent income payments. There might be, I guess, a period of time where there was unemployment benefits being received, or, just side jobs that you were having to do and trying to just get back on track and get to a good point, a starting point. From the bank's perspective, I mean, some things that we might notice if someone was in that situation is maybe recurring overdrafts. Maybe we would see balances in accounts drastically being reduced, maybe hovering around that $0 mark. Maybe if they did have loans with us, maybe there were requests to skip loan payments or defer loan payments, use of cash advances. So those are things that we may notice. And if we did notice that type of behavior, some things that we could recommend would be something like an overdraft protection line of credit, where you've got this, a line of credit, and if you did, overdraw your account, you could ensure that it's kind of providing peace of mind, so you can ensure that items are paid. So that would be one thing that we would, be able to offer. Another could be offering a savings account, where you could potentially have automatic payments drafted from a checking account. Even if you start super small, drafting payments to try to build up that savings account, and that can also serve as an overdraft account. Those would be a couple of things. And if somebody did come out of the military and maybe they were looking to get back on track, maybe there were some issues. I know we're going to talk about credit later. We do have various checking accounts and that we could offer them that would help get them reestablished.
That's wonderful. It's always great to see a bank that's focusing on the unique needs of our community. Gail, if you have anything to add to that, you may, but I also want to ask you specifically about, some of the things that people do when they are trying to track their expenses and they either lose track or they find themselves in debt. What are some of the common pitfalls and traps that you notice when people are trying to get their finances under control and are just not succeeding in that?
Well, in today's age, I feel like that we need to keep a constant check on our checking account, our savings account. We need to plan ahead. Like Michelle mentioned, I'm a true believer in savings, even if it's a small amount. If we can set up an allotment through your pay, or we can do through online banking, you can do transfers. It's just very important that you keep a close eye on your checking accounts and your savings accounts. I'm a big planner, so as a Marine Corps spouse, I always try to plan ahead for my expenses for each transfer. And then when my husband retired and we got out of the Marine Corps, it was very important that we had 3 to 6 months of savings set up, so that, because there is going to be a period of time where you have no pay. So if you don't have a job already lined up, then, you're still going to have some months in there that you may not have any pay. I know TSP is a great plan, but it's really important, I have found, to find a local banker that you can sit down with and discuss your budget and what your needs are locally. A lot of times, a community bank can offer that time and unique perspective on the different ways and different accounts that we have that we can share with our customers. I love the fact that we are a community bank and we can share that with our customers, help them build a good monthly savings, and then they can transfer that into a CD and prepare themselves for a deployment or a transfer that they know is coming up. Mm-hmm. So that's really a strong perspective that I have.
Perfect. I'm glad to hear that. And now, Dan, I do want to hear from you, because I know Gail was just talking about how she loves to plan ahead and be prepared. And I think military families often like to do that as much as possible. But as you know, there's tons of changes where we can't always plan ahead perfectly. But if someone were planning a large purchase, say a mortgage or, buying a car, what are some good things that they can do to prepare for that lending request and make sure that their credit is in the right place and their debt is in a safe place to get them approved for that type of a loan?
Sure. So if you're starting your credit, obviously you want to, a good way to establish credit would be like a secured credit card. They are a good starting point, a good kickoff point for somebody, that is just joining the military. But if they have established their credit already, a good way to do it is make sure your utilization on your credit cards is not too high. So good utilization is between 10 and 30% of what you have as far as your balances. And what that basically means is if you have a credit card limit of $1,000, you probably want to keep that balance between like $100 to $300. So think about it that way. Really going over utilization, having it at $900 on a $1,000 credit card, that's going to affect your credit score. It's going to lower your score down. Setting up auto pay. So just making sure that you have an auto draft set up every single month. And we'll talk about that in future questions, but that's always a good thing as well. Monitor your credit as well. So Credit Karma, Experian, they have in freecreditreport.com programs like that. Don't think that Credit Karma's credit score is 100% the end-all, be-all. That's the one thing. But you can at least get an idea that your credit score, if something looks a little weird on there's something that pops up, they will notify you as well. So that's where you're going to monitor. Don't worry about your credit score as much with that, but make sure that you can do that as well. So the biggest thing also with a large purchase, especially with a mortgage, is do not think that you need to buy your furniture during the mortgage process. Wait until after you've done that. You would be surprised at how many times that does happen where somebody goes, oh, well, I bought my furniture and I bought my appliances. Okay, well, now we have a problem because your debt to income is a little bit higher than it needs to be. So that's the biggest thing when we're in the process. Do not open up any new credit. And you'll get an email from our bank, from any of our lenders, that basically says that. It says, okay, we're in the process. Please remember these steps. So, yeah.
That's so important. And I think it's such a good tip and reminder that, your credit total, that your total balance that's approved does not mean that that's what you should be using on your cards. I think that's such a common misperception. And I unfortunately confess that I did not know until a few years ago that that directly is part of that credit score calculation. The amount of unused account balance is actually so important to building up your credit. So just that tip alone, I hope would really help some of our users to understand that there are small changes you can make that are not going to be, painful on a day-to-day basis, but just understanding how these processes work and how these numbers are calculated can really make a difference for you. And that's what we're here to do. So I want to talk, since all of you have experience in the areas of either borrowing money and loans from the bank or helping people to get out of debt in preparation for these loans. These are some of the biggest topics and requests that we hear from our users on the edge. A lot of people are coming to our platform for financial education to understand what steps should I take to get out of debt. South Atlantic is providing free EDGE membership to military members in the local community. So we want to make sure that they are taking advantage of all of those resources. So I'd like to hear from both Michelle and Dan, but specifically on the topic of the Military Lending Act, how that works for our military families and how that protects people from these high interest predatory loans. What does that look like from a user perspective and maybe from the banking side as well?
You want to go first, Michelle?
Yeah, sure. That's fine. So the Military Lending Act, that is definitely something that all veterans or active service members need to be aware of, because it is a great way to protect yourselves. It does protect active duty service members and their dependents, and it does cover loans that more like installment loans, credit cards, primarily all loans, with the exception of loans covered by dwellings and purchase money loans. So if you are getting some type of new financing for something that you're purchasing while you're an active service member, you always want to ask, is the loan MLA compliant? You can also request the MAPR disclosure and ask for all fees in writing. And this is just a way that can protect you. It is capped at 36%, the MAPR, and that may sound like a high interest rate, but in certain cases, if you are getting certain types of payday loans, those can be, in the like 300% range. So it's very important. This is a great way to protect those of you that are serving in our military. So definitely make sure to check into that if you're getting any type of loans.
For sure. And Dan, any feedback on how someone would, begin to do that research or have that conversation about the Military Lending Act when they are seeking a loan from the bank?
Well, I mean, one, you want to verify your status with MLA. So you can, a JAG officer or somebody along that line can help you out with that, credit you free credit counseling. So that would really be, I think everything that Michelle said is pretty much, it covers it. But yeah, that's the main important thing, is to make sure that you are covered by that and that you are eligible for that. So.
Got it. All right. And then, Michelle, because we are in a high inflation environment right now, a lot of people are asking that question of, should I consider debt consolidation? When does that make sense to me versus doing your typical repayments? If I have 3 different credit cards with different interests and different balances, should I be paying them individually on my own plan? Or when do you decide that it makes sense to roll them together into a debt consolidation plan?
Sure. I mean, I think first and foremost, it's great. You've just got to know exactly where you stand, right? So it's probably a good idea to really sit down, look at all of your liabilities. You're wanting to look at the interest rates associated with each of those, the terms. Are they fixed? Are they variable? And kind of thinking about, I guess, your income at the time as well. Have you reestablished stable income, or are you still trying to get back on your feet? Things like that. I mean, in best case scenario, what you would probably want to do is look at those loans, and if you can, start paying down the smallest balances first. That's going to help you kind of get some monthly liabilities off your plate. But you're going to want to look and see what balances there are and what the interest rates are. If if that doesn't really seem to be the right thing, debt consolidation could potentially make sense if rates are, between 20 and 30%. It's going to depend on the types of loans that you've got. But let's see, always be thinking about, too, the types of loans. If you have a VA mortgage, federal student loans, or older fixed rate loans, it may just be better to continue with a standard repayment option. Lower fixed rate payments, you're in a good position there because hopefully your income's going to be increasing, but your interest rate is staying lower and steady, so you're going to be in a better position there. So I think just really sitting down, taking a look at what types of loans, the interest rates, the terms. And that's the beauty of working with a community bank. Any of us could sit down and just kind of help someone look and see where they are and make maybe some recommendations as to what makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a wonderful service that's provided. Gail, I would really love to hear from you and some of your experience. I know that when my family was moving, we often did have a lot of PCS debt. Yes, the military does reimburse some of your moving costs, but of course, there's a lot of things that aren't reimbursed or that you're paying out of pocket and waiting months to get that reimbursement check. So for families that might be carrying a lot of credit card debt related to PCS moves or just the other infrequent instabilities of military life, are there any banking products specific to South Atlantic that would really help someone bridge that gap or get through that time period?
There are. I would say to set up an allotment to pay every 2 weeks when you get your pay, to pay down those credit debts. I would be very cautious in your overspending. I would budget yourself and see what your expenditures are every month, what your income is coming in, anything that you have extra that you don't need for food or monthly expenses. Apply that to your debt as soon as you possibly can to reduce that, because the interest rate on credit cards is always really heavy. But again, I would suggest always planning ahead. Try to save some money ahead of your transfer so that you will be able to cover some of those transfer expenses that's not being taken on by the military. And be aware too, because I know that a lot of the wives that I've dealt with over the years, you want new things when you get to your new duty station. And I would just, if that is something you're needing new furniture or you're needing new stuff when you get to your new duty station, to hold off until you get your credit and your debt under control. And just like Michelle had added, if you deal with a community bank that's there locally, you'll have a friend that would be able to sit down with you and help you to make those plans and to set up an allotment. You can do transfers online. We have a beautiful online banking system that will really help you with your transfer. So you can do online bill pay, which you can set up, and it will automatically make those payments for you every month. So just keep a check on all of those things and just make sure that you do a little planning ahead.
Yeah, so important. And I know that we often, we didn't know where we'd be moving, but we could typically predict the year that my husband would be getting his orders. And we'd often start saving up a year in advance because we didn't know where it would be, but we knew it would be expensive. And so we just had to start putting money away for those PCS moves. But great advice there. And then, Dan, I wanted to ask you about these mortgage loans. The current housing market has been a little bit crazy. So what would you recommend that veterans or active duty know about using their VA home loan for the first time, and specifically in this current environment?
Absolutely. So, they have been a little bit kind of going like this the past couple of weeks for sure. So, with a VA loan, there is a couple benefits of it. One, you don't have to have a down payment. It's 0% down. There's no PMI on that as well. And PMI basically is when you put less than 20% down on a general mortgage, you have what's called private mortgage insurance, which is just another a payment into your, another expense. So you don't have that. You can have the seller pay for your closing costs as well. There is a VA funding fee that is associated with all VA loans. However, the good thing is you can actually finance that into the loan. It is a 30-year fixed mortgage. The other things is with VA loans, they are typically going to be probably around 0.25% lower than a regular conventional loan. So a lot of times when we are talking with a borrower, I will talk to them about, okay, are you eligible for a VA loan? Yes, I am. Okay, here's what your rates are for this one. Here's what your rates are for this one as well. Here's what we're going to save you over time. And, even with the VA funding fee, here's why it's going to be a better option for you. There is a couple things though about VA loans. So an appraiser does come out, and it's an appraiser that is certified to do VA loans. They are going to be a little bit more stringent when it comes to an appraisal than on a conventional loan. We want to make sure that the house is sound, that it's sturdy, that you're not buying, we're not filming Money Pit Part 2 here. We want to make sure that you're getting that associated with. With a VA loan, though, typically you cannot buy a fixer-upper. That's the one thing to remember, is you typically cannot buy something that, doesn't have, has a couple things. It has to be done before you can move in. So.
Good to know. All right. That's excellent. And now I do want to get into, again, if anyone has questions, you can leave them in the chat for our speakers. We've been speaking about, managing debt, managing credit. And now we want to talk about building up and improving that credit and understanding your credit score. So this is something that again, I only learned in the last few years how much your credit score can impact everything. I knew, of course, that it factors in when you're doing something major like a mortgage or a car purchase, but even things like your utility bill and your cell phone bill, you're getting a credit report pull on those items and you're being charged accordingly. And so the steps that you take to improve your credit, even a little bit, can have very meaningful impact on your everyday life. So I would like to hear, I guess, from any of you, whichever one wants to start. We want to talk about how military is moving so frequently, and obviously those different periods of a spouse being employed and unemployed and things like that can really impact your credit history. So when you have a lot of these life disruptions, what's the best thing that we can do to maintain a strong credit score throughout those experiences?
I'll hop in with one thing because I'm kind of building on something that Gail mentioned. I think automation is going to help in those situations the most. The more debts that you can have set up on auto pay or through a bill pay system to have recurring payments, I think you're going to have less likelihood that you're missing a statement because maybe your address changed and you didn't get that updated yet. So finding as many ways to automate things as possible. One thing, just thinking about the automation, and we talked a little bit about new credit accounts, I wanted to just mention like closing accounts as well. When you've got a certain credit line and you've had it for a long time, but maybe you find a new card and you wanted to use a new card. A mistake that some people will make is closing that credit line, and that can substantially affect your credit score and not in a good way. So even if you do, start using a different card, you in most cases, if you've had a card for a long period of time, leave that one open. And maybe set up something like some type of small subscription amount. Maybe it's Apple or whatever it might be, or your gym member, I don't know what it is, but just set it up on auto pay so that you're still using that card. Your utilization amount, like we talked about, or percentage is low, but you're not giving up that history that you've had. So that's one thing, is just maintaining those accounts. And that automation piece, that's also going to help with your payments, because that is also key to that credit pie that we have. And just making sure that we're making our payments on time through automation as well.
For sure. I think that's such a smart tip, not only when you're moving, but also during deployments. I know that there were times when my husband, who was the active duty service member, often he was handling the bills and the payments. And, if he deployed and went to an area that had no internet access, we had to make sure that before he left, I was set up with all the access to those proper accounts and the logins. And the more that you can automate, definitely the higher success you're going to have of paying everything on time and not forgetting about something or letting a date slip past you. So having that type of consistency when different people are handling the accounts at different times can be really helpful as well. Gail and Dan, is there anything you wanted to add to that on how to maintain a strong credit score?
I would like to add that it's very, very important that you check your credit report periodically. If you see anything on your credit report that you don't see as being something that you have done, go to that lender and dispute it. Typically, on a credit report, there are phone numbers and folks to reach out to. And then I would add that if you are in the middle of a dispute with a credit item on your credit report, make sure that you write down the name of the person and the phone number of the person that you spoke with, and then request a copy of a letter if they clear up the dispute to a zero balance and take care of any disputes that you have. Make sure that you follow up with a letter, because a lot of times when we are transferring, some of those credit issues might follow you, and you need to have something in your portfolio to show that those were taken care of and cleared up. You don't want to, say, I've taken care of that dispute, but you don't have any proof to back it up. So my biggest recommendation would be to write down the person you talked to, the phone number that you called, and get a dispute letter to carry with you when you do your transfer.
All right. And Dan, I guess on either of those topics, then either maintaining a good credit score or what to do about fixing bad credit, and what to do if you have creditors who are hounding you from one duty station to the next. What are the best ways to handle some of those scenarios?
Sure. So a couple things with that. You can actually put on your credit bureau, if you're active duty, you can contact one of the bureaus and they will contact the other two for you as well. So you can let them know that you are on active duty. I'd recommend doing that first of all. As far as repairing credit, just to kind of go over a couple things, yes, you definitely want to contact the company. To piggyback off of what Gail said, a lot of times what I'll tell someone is if they're going to get it could be a utility bill that they're having removed from their bureau. When you have them on the phone, ask them to email you a copy of the receipt. Ask them right then and there, like, can you send me an email so I have it? And then also ask them to mail you one, but at least try to get one so you have it in your possession. One, you can forward it on to a lender, you can forward it on to somebody as well. You have the right to dispute it with a credit bureau, obviously, as well. So usually when you dispute it with one bureau, you can dispute it with all of them if they're on one bureau. But if it's on just your TransUnion, you don't have to call Experian. Just make sure that you're calling the one that it is showing up on. But if it is on all three, you can do that. Typically, they have 30 days. A creditor has 30 days to respond back to that with some sort of a resolution. And then usually, if it is not responded back within 30 days, usually it is able to be cleared off your bureau.
Perfect. Those are really good tips. And I know that the bank has also put together a presentation here with additional resources on this topic. So I want to go ahead and share this with you and then make sure that we can continue our conversation here. So we are going to be talking about some of the ways that there are specific military and veteran resources through South Atlantic and through general banking. So, Dan, would you like to explain this more?
Yeah, one thing I did want to say, though, is you had talked about if a creditor was hounding as well.
Oh, yes.
Obviously a creditor does have the right to collect on a debt, but they also have to follow, different guidelines as well. One recommendation, especially if you're on active duty, though, that I do want to say is please make sure you are talking to, if you're past due on something, if you fall past due on somebody on a loan, please make sure you are talking to the creditor. The creditor does have the right to contact your commanding officer. We don't want that to happen, but they do have the right to do that. So just make sure that you are trying to work with them. A good way to improve your credit, we've kind of talked about it, is paying debt if you get extra money. I do believe in kind of like the snowball effect too, where just pay off one. Like if you can pay off your, bank A first, just do that because one, it feels like a victory for you, and it just kind of helps build up, and it does kind of start snowballing as it goes downhill. So yeah, that's what I would kind of say to work on too. So
For sure. All right, so today we are focusing on some military and veteran specific financial resources. And so what you're seeing here are some of the savings guides, tips, and strategies for building savings as a military family. And I think, was it Dan who was going to present in this section?
For savings guys?
Yep. I wasn't told who was presenting on each slide, so.
I don't handle the retail side very much, but
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm happy to talk a little bit about, as I mentioned when we first started, we do have various accounts that I think can work for anyone wherever they might be in their financial journey. And we also have savings accounts that offer low amounts that you can open the savings accounts with. Were there specific things that you were looking for us to mention on the slide?
Oh, I think the bank just wanted to highlight the fact that these are all military specific terms and products and services that the military community should familiarize themselves with. And I believe South Atlantic does offer these resources and benefits to their community members. So, for example, if you've never looked into the TSP, which is your thrift savings plan, that's basically a retirement account that is for military specifically, and you can be adding into that during your active duty time. So if there are any specific South Atlantic resources that you wanted to highlight on this page, feel free to do so, but otherwise we can talk about additional resources.
Well, Liz, and I would just like to add that I, in the past, have used a savings account as a budgetary tool. And, I would take my bills, like my cable bill, my utility bill, and I'd divide it by 12, and I'd make sure that out of each paycheck I would put money into my savings account, so as those bills came due, I had the funds available to make those payments. We have a lot more automation today than we used to. So if you have a savings account or a checking account with us, you can set those up on automated payments. But a budgetary tool sometimes is great to have. It's a plan. And I think that if you are saving, for a transfer, it's nice to know that you can put some money away in a savings account, and then once you build that up to like $500 or so dollars, you can move that into a certificate of deposit that will have a greater interest rate, so that then when you get ready to make that transfer, you've had several CDs that are now ready to be matured, and you've got additional interest savings. So if you have someone in a community bank that can help you make these decisions, I think a budgetary tool like a savings account would come in very handy.
It's a great resource, and it's a really good way to approach it. So we've talked a lot about credit reports today, and this is information on the details for checking your credit report and really understanding that process. So who wanted to elaborate on what that process looks like for a bank member?
I would say I recommend using annualcreditreport.com to pull your credit report. When you do so, it is not like hurting your credit score. And it's going to give you the most realistic and accurate picture of your credit score. It's great to look at. I would say for military specifically, it's going to be good to look at least quarterly. You want to make sure that you have, the balances are correct, your address is correct, make sure there aren't any duplicate accounts, no fraudulent inquiries, and making sure all of the payments are reporting correctly as well. But typically when you go online and do request the report, you get it instantaneously. So you do have it at your fingertips within just a few minutes.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think I just wanted to highlight as well that through GoVA's program, The Edge, which is what South Atlantic is providing to our local military members for free, you can also do a credit report check there. It is a soft pull, so it doesn't affect your overall score. And you'll get a lot of feedback on how to understand the numbers in that credit report, what the factors are that go into that calculation, small steps that you can make to improve it. So it really walks you through the whole program, and it's a great resource for our community. After you've received that credit report and you now know your number, what is it that someone should do with that number? I think, Michelle, you just started touching on some of this, but do you want to elaborate on everything that you should be making sure is correct on your report and what to do if you think some of that information is incorrect or there's been an erroneous calculation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So I mentioned most of these, but let's see if there was anything else I wanted to add into here. I think everything's listed. So we talked about name and address are the correct accounts, the balance information, your payments, and then inquiries as well. So if you see something on there that you did not apply for, that is definitely a red flag. So there's two different avenues. If you see mistakes, but you have not experienced identity theft, that is when you are going to reach out to the credit bureau in writing, and you're going to provide them with the information that you feel is inaccurate. Any documentation that you might be able to provide with that letter that you're sending to them is going to be beneficial. They will investigate the claim, and let's see, what else did I mention? If that company finds that the information that you are saying is inaccurate, it will notify all three credit agencies. You can find sample letters online, I think at the FTC website, maybe even at the Edge. Liz Ann, maybe you can speak to that a little bit more. I'm not sure. Are there any tools there?
I think so. Actually, that's a good point. I haven't used that particular one, but I think it does give you templates of, what to be including in those letters or what you would do with that letter for your records and your file. So thank you.
Absolutely. If you did see errors and you have had identity theft, then you can also go to identitytheft.gov, and that walks you through what to do in that scenario.
And yes, there's also a lot of identity theft information on the Edge, and a lot of our resources will point you to the FTC and like the official reporting websites where they have a lot more step-by-step instructions and details. So certainly encourage you to do that. I think you actually have covered a lot of this as well about what to include in your letter, to save a copy. And is there any other details that we're missing here on how to fix your credit report?
I don't have anything.
There really isn't.
No,
Pretty.
All right.
Pretty complete.
She was extra thorough, got ahead of me on the slides. So, Dan had mentioned this before that, if you are getting calls from a debt collector, obviously that's not something you can ignore and take lightly. It is something that has to be addressed one way or another. But there are times when military families are moving frequently. We're changing our phone numbers, going overseas, changing addresses. And honestly, probably the only debt collector calls I've ever received have been due to TRICARE health insurance issues where there were problems with filing and problems with hospitals and things that weren't technically our error, but it had gone on so long that it reaches that point of debt collection. So are there any follow-up information and advice on what to do if you are dealing with that situation of, let's use the example of a credit card that has gone past dates and is now in collection?
So, I mean, definitely one thing is if you are getting, bombarded with phone calls, you can do a request to have them in writing going forward. So you do have that right to do that. If I see on here, it says if the debt is yours, make a plan how to pay it or talk to a credit counselor. A big difference to remember, though, and Gail and I were talking about this morning, was make sure it is a credit counselor. So the military will be able to provide you with a credit counselor. There is a difference between a credit counselor and a credit settlement company. And what a credit settlement company does is each month they'll have you pay, let's just start a number, $300 to them. So each month you're paying and it gets to $3,600 at the end of the year. Well, then they're going to try to call a credit card company and say, okay, we'll go ahead and we'll settle with you for $1,000. Well, they collected $2,600 off of that. And what they're doing basically is they are not helping you in any way like a credit counseling service is. So definitely utilize military credit counseling companies. They're going to lead you the right way. So, and just make sure it's not a credit, a debt services company. So that's a huge thing to remember because they are not here to help you. And a lot of times banks will not work with them because of that.
Really valuable to know. And I know that not every military base, but most of the larger military bases do have, through the Family Center or through the Base Services Center, you can get in touch with financial counselors and with credit counselors. So would that be the official source, would be the on-base financial service provider?
I think absolutely, yes. So.
Okay. That's a great place to go. And then anything else about, you talked about how you can get things in writing and how you can get credit counseling, and any other follow-up on this?
No.
I'll go to the next. These are the, national contact numbers for each of the credit reporting agencies. Obviously, you can use each of them to check your credit independently, or you can go to the free annual report site that was shared earlier. Michelle, I think you had some tips on that. Anything you want to add here?
No, I don't think so. I would just say, take advantage of that. It's a great resource and it's a great thing to do just to make sure you're aware of really what your credit report, how it looks, and monitoring that. And credit is a long game. So just look at it that way. It's typically not established or maybe repaired overnight.
For sure. It's something that we're going to have to make those small choices every day. And then these are federal resources for our viewers that are, again, military and veteran specific. And the SCRA, that Service Members Civil Relief Act, sounds very similar to the Military Lending Act that you mentioned earlier, but I know there is an important distinction. So do you want to clarify the difference between how that Military Lending Act works specific in difference to the SCRA?
The SCRA, that is for debt that was incurred prior to being placed on active military leave. And then that interest rate cap is a little bit different. So it's a 6% interest rate cap versus the 36% on the Military Lending Act. But again, it's for debt incurred prior to being placed on active duty.
Perfect. Okay. That's a really good distinction to know. FTC, we mentioned earlier, that is the Federal Trade Commission. Great resource for any type of fraud, identity theft. All kinds of resources on their site on how to prevent it, how to report it, how to verify and check out companies. I know when we've moved to a new military base and you're trying to find, everything from the grocery store to the dentist to a car mechanic and et cetera, then you really need to look up these local companies and find out which ones are legitimate. Do they have open reports against them from the military community, or are they a trusted resource locally? So those are some of the resources that we'd recommend. And then I do want to touch on financial counseling, because we just talked about credit counseling. Financial counseling is a little bit more broad and covers additional topics, but there are several options available to our military community. Are any of these currently used through South Atlantic Bank, or is there anything that you want to add about them?
I'm just reading them over here.
Yeah. I think the CFPB does have good resources for consumers, so it's a great resource. And I know you've got on here, I think this is important, that first one under VetSense, the budgeting tools, creating that budget and monitoring, sticking to it. That's definitely important and a great resource.
For sure. All right.
Lisa, I just wanted to add also that if you're considering working with a credit company to help you and assist you in paying off debt, keep in mind that they a lot of times can report to the credit bureau that these particular accounts are under credit counseling. And if you're going to make a large purchase like a home or a car, that could hinder your chances. So be very careful who you're working with and make sure that, it's friendly towards the veteran and the active duty service member, and that they're not going to report to the credit bureau, because yes, you do want assistance, but sometimes assistance can hinder you as well. So just make sure and do your research and understand exactly who you're working with, because, they have a lot of dreams that they can make your credit go away in a certain amount of time. If it's too good to be true, then a lot of times it is too good to be true.
Always great advice. I appreciate that, because there are certainly a lot of services out there. All right. Well, these are the speakers and experts that we have heard from today. I want to thank again Michelle and Dan and Gail for joining us and sharing your expertise. Finally, for those who have been listening in, we just want to give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you have in the chat. We've heard on such a variety of financial topics here. So if you do have questions about understanding your credit report, what to do with those numbers, how to improve the bad credit that you might have, or how to maintain a good credit score, if that is your situation, I'm really grateful for the experts here at South Atlantic who have shared their perspective with us. So I will give you a moment to write anything in the chat, and I will double check if we have any feedback from our audience. But so far, I learned a lot today. I always learn a lot when we get to interact with our banking partners, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to go through this with you, and especially for banks like South Atlantic, who are really aware of their local military and veteran community members and understanding just those unique crazy challenges that come with military life and how that can impact things like our finances, like our debt, our credit card management, and all of that. So thanks again for joining us today, and for walking through some of these processes. Is there anything that we missed that you would like to add, or that you think is really important to share with our military community?
Thank you for having us, though. We really appreciate it, and thank you for everybody that's on. Obviously, I think I can speak for Gail and Michelle with this, but thank you for your service as well.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We appreciate your support. All right. Well, we will do this again with South Atlantic Bank. Maybe the same experts, maybe a different team. So stay tuned for our upcoming events and topics. But again, thank you so much to South Atlantic for their support and their partnership. And we will make this recording available to you shortly.